Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. This is Cyrus, currently 2 months into my lockdown, stranded in the Philippines, which also includes 2 months without access to a barber or hair salon, as you can see by my hair slowly retrofitting itself to become like a mid-2000s emo boy, which seems to happen naturally as time goes by without having access to a barber. But on the same note, it's not so bad looking like a 2000s emo boy sometimes, as long as you don't take it too far, and especially you don't dye this black or put on any guy liner. That would be just way too much. On this video, we are continuing from the last video talking about, well, in this case, the subject of memory and conditions of memory after we cross over, after we leave this frequency of reality and transition into the next one. I'm once again on the blog of Michael Time, one of maybe the most, I'd say, well-researched afterlife researchers. Somebody who has, I think, compiled the greatest amount of information concerning this subject available anywhere, just on his blog at whitecrowbooks.com /Michael Tim. It's Tymn. As you can see, there's archives dating back many years with posts every month going all the way back down about the last decade or longer, about 1 decade. And this most recent article is the one that I referenced in the prior video. Scientists who don't know that the Earth exists. So what this means is that somebody here kicks the bucket, their spirit goes up to the spirit world, which we would call a higher frequency, fourth or fifth dimension. There's different terminologies, but we know it exists. There's different ways of phrasing what that place is. And then from there, they lead a happy, life on that side, and then they become skeptics that this world exists. So they were skeptics before that side existed. Now they're skeptics that this side exists because they're so caught up in this philosophy of scientism. So they're just completely blindsided. But further on this same article, there was a point that Time brings up that I want to address more fully and maybe even disagree with just a tiny bit, but hopefully help to understand pretty complicated subject concerning having a lack of memory when you cross over, and why that may interfere with certain tests and protocols that we perform here to verify people on that side. So before we go further, you're watching Afterlife Topics, where we tackle these complex supernatural metaphysical topics. We've already gone through the rabbit hole. We're not trying to debate whether or not the other side exists or supernatural things exist. Other people can chase their own tails doing that all night long. For all I care, I have long gone beyond that frame of mind, and now it's just about dissecting and understanding what is on the other side of that bridge, instead of being kind of trapped in the middle, as many people tend to be. So the point of this channel is that we're already on the other side of that bridge, and we are trying to figure out what we've already determined to basically be real. And that's why we go into the deeper end of the pool around here. Let's now continue to the article. Oh yeah, by the way, please hit that subscribe button, like the video, share the video if you think that this work is important. I think I may be the only channel on YouTube that dissects this material. I don't know of anywhere else besides maybe Off the Left Eye, which is specifically about Swedenborg's material, which is a great channel. It does dissect this information, but that's only focused on Swedenborg. I think I'm the only channel that researches this stuff from all perspectives, not just Swedenborg, who had great material, but the heaps and heaps and heaps of other areas of information, most of which is pretty darn consistent. So anyway, just subscribing to the channel helps a lot. YouTube has been unsubscribing people from this channel, so people who are subscribers have been saying, hey, I noticed I wasn't subscribed to your channel anymore, but I watch you all the time. Pretty sketchy if you ask me, so please go down and double check to make sure you're still subscribed. If just in the event that YouTube decided to kick you off. So again, who knows why that's been happening. It's just More garbage to deal with. So let's now look at this next part of the article. Okay. So first, time extrapolates a little bit on the idea of people being earthbound, people being attached to their physical bodies, and how that can prevent them from properly coming to terms with the fact that they're on a higher frequency, sometimes even physically lingering around their bodies because they're in such a denial. Time writes, if I am interpreting various metaphysical teachings correctly, there are magnetic currents keeping the individual in the earthbound condition. These currents should not be confused with the so-called silver cord, the connecting link between the physical body and the spirit body, astral body, fourth or fifth dimensional body, whatever you want to call it. The silver cord will have been severed at the time of physical death, liberating the spirit body, but the magnetic currents can still keep the spirit body close to the physical body. Many times I've been out of my body and I felt this pull pulling me back into my physical body, and I don't think it's the silver cord either. It did feel like, I have like this strong attachment, energy-based attachment to the body laying on my bed. And transitioning into a full out-of-body experience can sometimes be difficult because you're trying to wrestle yourself out of your body, and it's like there's something keeping you kind of stuck into it. Moreover, cremation does not undo the gravitational pull of a materialistic life, but at least mitigates the pull. What this means is that even if you burn the body, somebody who is very, very both physically and psychologically attached to both the body they had and the earth life they had may be very reluctant to let it go, and may even be hanging around in that body, sometimes even in a state of unconsciousness, especially people who really believe that death means a permanent sleep. Some people who believe that so strongly, that's actually what they get, and they're just lingering in their body until finally they wake up enough and somebody can come and pull them out of that state and hopefully bring them to some kind of rest or recuperation area on the higher frequency. Time continues. Back to the Wood brothers, who I referenced in the video before this one. Dennis cautioned Frederick about, Dennis being his transition brother, about word tests, pointing out that Lodge, who died in 1940, had, while alive, arranged to communicate a secret word after his passing in such a way that the recipient would know that he had survived. However, it was apparently unsuccessful. He continues, nothing passes so quickly from the memory on this side as the form and construction of mere word phrases. Dennis communicated, further explaining what many others have said, that theirs is a thought world, one in which ideas, not words, are communicated. Lodge is very sorry now that he chose that particular form of test. It is not easy or natural for us to communicate with your side in this way. So to translate to English, what are we talking about? Many people, they set up these tests to confirm that that their loved one is still around. For instance, it might be banana. And so then they contact a medium, and the medium says, I'm getting this image of a banana. Now you know that it really is your loved one coming through because they're sending the message of a banana. I think it's a really good idea to do this kind of test. I'm going to explain why sometimes it doesn't work, and also why I find this particular anecdote to be a little bit questionable. It doesn't make a lot of sense based upon what I know. I'm going to point out why that is. So when it comes to word tests, the idea here is that sometimes they fail, and it can really leave somebody feeling helpless, like maybe there is no afterlife because we had this specific word and mediums aren't coming up with it, or I'm not getting any other, not through any other channel. I'm just not getting this word from the other side. So maybe my deceased loved one really isn't around. I've also heard the opposite. I've heard stellar stories from people saying, we had this complicated word test, whatever it is, didgeridoo, and first thing that happens, they pass away, and then I see a didgeridoo for sale on the sidewalk, and then I keep going. I go home that night, and I wake up, and I hear didgeridoo in my head as loud as possible, and then I go to a medium. They know nothing about me, and the medium says, I'm seeing somebody playing the didgeridoo. I've heard stories like that, and they're very profound, and they can make somebody into a complete believer in the subject. I've also heard about non-success stories as well. So why would this word test not succeed? So according to this anecdote from the 50s, from this one particular source, a spirit person actually forgets the word because they don't communicate using words. They communicate using thoughts, images, and ideas, which are like instantaneous thought transfer. It's not like they don't use words. That's what's being alleged here. Certain spirit sources have said that when you communicate on that side, you're not using words, you're not using normal communication, you are using, again, that instantaneous thought transfer. And what's being alleged here in this anecdote that Michael Time is reporting is that they're not able to remember even specific words anymore because they don't use that mode of language anymore. Well, this may make sense on the surface. It also makes very little sense to me from my own personal experiences. I don't think that they would not remember a word. First of all, memory seems, well, I don't think that you have full access to all memories. I'm pretty sure you do have enough memory access that if something is important to you, you can remember banana, even if you're not using words like banana anymore to communicate. So I find that odd. Number two, there's been a lot of accounts of EVP spirits talking to each other, having conversations that are picked up via EVP using English words. So if this is really the only way people communicate, that seems very unusual to me. Point number three, I have had astral communication experiences with higher dimensional beings, not even just the regular blokes you may meet on that side, but more advanced people. And the communication is a combination of thoughts, images, ideas, pictures being sent directly into your mind, and actual English words. It's like it all synthesizes together to create a crisper form of communication. So if I'm saying Disney World, I'm not just saying Disney World, I'm also transferring to you actual mental imagery of what Disney World looks like. And then I want to paint a story, Godzilla attacks Disney World. Now, instead of you just picturing that in your mind, I'm creating that image. It's almost like cosmic multimedia and sending that image into your mind so you can see it very clearly, as well as feelings, ideas. It's like this data transfer. All of this is highlighted with actual, like, real human language to help sort of crystallize what is being spoken about. That's my own experience. It's this experience of many other people as well, that you can communicate telepathically, but there's no reason to believe that you would not remember words. It would seem that in all of my experiences doing astral stuff, I've never met somebody who was not able to communicate in crisp, clear English language, as well as other languages. That's one way I'll know that I'm really out of my body is if someone's speaking a different language, I'll wake up and then I'll go look a word up that I heard them say, and I'll find it's a real word that I had learned while I was, seemingly asleep on my bed. So lots of experience using words. It's oftentimes clearer, sharper, and accented by telepathic data and imagery on that side. But there is no evidence to indicate that you stop using English words altogether, stop using, rather, I should say, human language words, maybe in certain much higher conditions. But it's not anything I've ever experienced. It's also contradicts a lot of physical mediumship where they basically come through with perfectly crisp voices that everybody can hear, and they have no issues remembering words this way. If what this one anecdote suggests is true, then they wouldn't be able to communicate like they do with us historically or through personal experiences using crisp language, crisp words. They would be unable to remember those words. So I find this account to be pretty difficult to believe. So why is it that these spoken word tests may fail sometimes? I think the reason they may fail, and I guess this is the bigger point of this video, is I do believe that people forget things on that side. I don't think it's like it's imposed upon them. I don't think it's like they get like a reverse amnesia effect where they can't remember their lives. I think sometimes they put their old lives out of their head. Like they get adapted into a new life on that side, and they just slowly forget a lot of details about this side. And when it comes to like a word or a phrase, I think it's possible that they may not be able to remember it sometimes if they're so caught up in the new life they're leading. If the life they led here was particularly traumatic, they may actually make themselves forget big chunks of the life they once had. I also think that when it comes to remembering specific words like this, how do you say it? I think, well, it's tough because, I mean, if it's an important word or phrase, you'd think that they would be able to remember it. But I guess kind of like basically like I just said, I think that sometimes they don't want to remember the life they had here. And I think an additional factor, and this is maybe more controversial, is what is the basis of memory itself? So in our human body, we have neurons, we have synapses, we have electrical signals that can access the true focus, the true point of memory, which is outside of the brain, but it's able to bring that in as a signal. What if on that side they have something similar to that, similar to the physical brain? So we know that they have physical, or at least physical replica astral bodies of the bodies they once had. What's inside their head? What's behind the eyes? Do they have some form of a brain back there? Because if they do, that brain may be filtering information just like it was doing before, in which case they may again just plain forget stuff. It can also be the case if someone is recently deceased. They haven't remembered everything they needed to remember. They may be in kind of a daze, depending on what the conditions were when they crossed over. So there's a lot of unknown variables about why they may not remember certain things like this. One more variable concerns the nature of mediumship. Many people believe that mediums are having like a telephone communication with a deceased loved one. That's not necessarily the case. Sometimes mediumship is more like a clairvoyance or a remote viewing ability, just tapping into somebody else's consciousness. When you do that, you might have a difficult time tapping into and pulling out a specific phrase, a specific piece of information, if all they're doing is receiving a general sense of that person's energy, what they're doing, what they're thinking. Unless the medium can open up a direct channel of communication, they might not be able to recover a word or phrase from that person. Because again, they're not having that direct, like phone call level communication happening. So I think that's a variable as well. So the point is, there's lots of different variables why people on that side may not completely remember things. I think it's a stretch to say that because they stop using words that they would forget words. That really doesn't make any sense that they would forget words. And I don't want to poo-poo on this account, which I think, could have some merit behind it, but I don't know much about this communication. I don't know about Frederick and Dennis or the Wood brothers or any the Woods or whoever these guys were. I don't know how rigorous that communication was. I don't know if there could be something that wasn't completely accurate, or maybe just this particular spirit communicator is speaking from their own kind of wacky experiences. What I will say is that I'm basically 100% certain of is that on that side, they do use physical communication patterns like we use here, words, language, things like that. Even if they're not using it 100% of the time like we do here, they still use it because it still assists with communication. And we know that they still remember words, or else they wouldn't be able to communicate through all the channels that they use here to talk to us, especially through direct voice mediumship, or when you hear them talking through EVP communication, or even ITC research and things like that. So we know that they can communicate, we know they remember words, we know they can use words, but there's a lot of different reasons why memories may not be completely clear on that side. And one more point I'll make is that, as I talked about in the prior video, people from that side can see this world after a while as being this kind of dreamlike memory. Doesn't mean that they'll forget you, or doesn't mean they'll forget their life here, but it does mean that they might not have full recollection of especially specific details and chunks of it. You can use an analogy like maybe you had a really tough time when you were in 5th grade at school, And so that whole memory of fifth grade has become kind of like a blur, right? So do you remember the time that your friend in fifth grade, you know, gave you something and told you something and asked you to always remember it? And you're like, of course, I'll always remember it. And then, 20 years later, 30 years later, 40 years later, can you remember that thing? You might not even remember having had that conversation. For them, the short, what seems like a short expanse of time for us could be very different for them. And they may simply not be able to remember anymore, that important phrase, even though it was important. That said, many people do remember important things from this side, and they're able to verify them through good mediums and through other experiences, which definitely means you should do tests like this with your deceased loved ones anyway. And because hopefully you'll be one of the lucky ones, and you'll be able to use that to verify that they are still around, still in communication. Okay, that's it for this video. Thanks, guys, for watching. Stay in touch with me over at afterlifetopics.com. Grab a book like Understanding Life After DEATH, or my most recent book, The Afterlife and Beyond, to delve deeper into this subject. Get involved over at Afterlife Topics, or become a patron if you want to work with me personally. That's over at patreon.com/Afterlife Topics. Okay, I need a drink of water. I'll be back at you with a new video soon. Talk to you next time.